Hi everyone, and welcome to the fourth session of Time series. And today we have careers in general management. Today with us, we have the speaker for the session, Anindya, and he is an IIM Calcutta alumni, and he has a very different profile. He's done his BA in political science with sociology and anthropology as his minors from Ashoka University, and he is currently working in a very coveted job, Tata Administrative Services, and he is here to share insights about general management. And along with him, we also have Satish Sir, Director Ahmedabad, and we'll be starting with the session now. So over to you, Anandya. Any any words that you would want to say before we start off the session?
Right. First, I'd like to thank Satish sir for the opportunity to speak to the next generation of talent which will be coming into the corporate space. And yeah, so general management as a sector is essentially unexplored by a lot of undergrad level students because most of these companies don't hire at the undergrad level, right? Whereas for other sectors like say consulting, marketing, they hire from the undergrad level, so they're more they're popular and they're well known. But given that it's a sector which is accessible to you mostly only after an MBA, I would love to share my experience and to know from you what you think, your doubts, any questions you have about the sector. Anything, honestly, it's even if it's not related directly to the sector, if you just want to know about, the MBA space, that's also fine. So you can ask me any questions you need. And as for the session itself, it's not like I'm not a tutor. I'm not here to teach you anything. So if you have any questions, any queries, feel free to ask anything.
I think that really sets the tone for the session. So thank you for that, Anindya. So Anindya, now that we're talking about profile, and since we've already established that you have a very different profile, you come from an arts background. So can you just tell us how is it your journey has been in the undergrad? What did you do later on? How has the IIM Calcutta journey been?
All right. So for my undergrad, it was a different experience for me due to a different reason. At the time, till 2020, I was playing badminton, and that was my career. I had represented India for around a decade, and I was fully invested in that. So, unlike all of you, I was not into academics at all. I was not doing anything related to studies, and so undergrad wise, I had a very different experience. As for MBA itself, being an art student, I think it gave me a different. My experience was different from the conventional BTech slash BCom backgrounds because I come from a non-mathematical background, right? I didn't have mathematics after 10th, so I faced a lot of hardships in a few subjects, especially the finance-oriented ones and the supply chain ones, anything with stats involved. But apart from those subjects, I feel like I had a great time with subjects like marketing and organizational behavior. So while I would say the academic experience was slightly different, overall, I think I shared the exact same experience as most people have in an MBA space.
Right. I think that makes sense. So, Ananda, now that we're on the topic now, can you tell us what is general management according to you?
All right, so general management essentially it's a term that has been coined to there are general there's you don't exactly have a very specified skill set that is required for this role, right? And one could say it's similar to consulting in that sense that you need a diverse skill set, you need to be good at managing different tasks at once. But at the end of it, it's mostly to refer to roles which are available with conglomerates, which are essentially a collection of companies like say the Tata Group, the Aditya Birla Group, CK Birla Group, and so on. So within these companies, why it's called general management is because you'll be working across domains, across different industries, right? Because a conglomerate within itself, especially something like the Tata Group, it has a company in almost every industry. So there is that, and another factor is that you work across domains, right? Which is why it's called general management. So, for example, in my task journey so far, I worked at TCS, Air India, Tata Steel, and Tata Chemicals, and all four have been different in terms of the kind of tasks that were expected of me, the kind of essentially the entire domain was different because Air India was a brand launch and brand management stint. TCS was strategy stint, expansion strategy stint. In Tata Steel, I did supply chain and finance. In Tata Chemicals, right now I'm doing export strategy. So, given the diverse set of experiences you have, and given the different skill sets that are applied in every domain that you go to. So that's why it's called general management, right? So I think that's why the term was coined.
Yeah, Ananya, I think that makes sense. So, as you said that, it does not have a set specified definition, but, it is very dynamic definition of general management, right? So, so we want to understand, Ananya, a lot of our crowd currently will be joining their MBA college, in the next couple of months. And we want to understand how is it that, you got inspired to go into general management? And, how is it that you decided that, this is the career path which is right for you?
All right, so first of all, I mean, huh, I think both you and Satish sir will agree with this that placements are not always defined by our choice. Right? So it's not that I came into MBA thinking, oh, this is it, I want to get into task. But it's more about the like you get opportunities across different fields, and it's about what you can grab in a very short space of time. So initially, my overall bent was towards marketing, right? And it wasn't general management per se, but as for the selection, could you repeat your question again? What your exact question was?
So we want to understand like how is it that you decided that this is the right choice for you. So as you
Okay.
mentioned that maybe not a lot of choice was there in the placement process.
No, choice is there. You can always choose to apply or not to apply. But in that sense, I was more towards like I was bent more towards marketing. So more traditional FMCG companies like say P&G, HOL, Coca-Cola, and so on. But there are two factors. The first is general management gives you the scope to experiment, right? And that is something which I found really attractive because within TAS, I've experienced almost every domain there is to experience, right? And I wanted that flexibility. And apart from that, of course, the overall, given that it's a leadership program, career-wise, it's a better choice, right? In terms of career progress. So also, when I say marketing, marketing again is a very broad spectrum, right? And I hadn't really decided which part of it am I attracted to the most. And also, marketing also doesn't exactly mean marketing, does it? It means sales for 3 years and then a choice to go into marketing. So I didn't really like the idea of having to stay in a tier two city for 3 years. So that was where I had my doubts. And when task came up and I got the shortlist, I was like, okay, I have to try my best for this, and I'm done. And then I got it. So that's how it worked out.
Right. So that's great. Anindya, so now that we've understood how you've uh, gone into general management, can you highlight some of the skills which you feel are essential for a general management candidate? And also, are there any things or courses or anything where profile building can play a role?
This is a very hard question to answer because no one actually knows what these companies are looking for, right? No one actually knows. So, but the thing is because they're not looking for a very particular skill set, right? Because if you look at finance, they want a very highly specified skill set. They want you to have an L2 or an L3 CFA or other ways to prove your skills. So there is so essentially they're not looking for a particular skill set, right? What they look for, however, like one thing we know is they look for structure. So what I mean by structure is they look for a structured approach, whatever you've done so far in your life, from your undergrad, not as far back as your schooling, but from undergrad onwards. They want to see that you followed your first thing that they look for is have you followed your passions, right? And have you made the right decisions? And if you have not made the right decisions, are you honest about it? And have you made efforts to, do something about it? So, for example, I mean, again, when you say skills, building your CV, the people who get hired into TAS, ABG, the other German companies which come in Mahindra, none of them, like you can't look at that pool of candidates and say, okay, this is the common line between all of them. Most of them come from very different backgrounds. Many of them were engineers, some of them were architects. I'm an arts person, there was someone from a finance background. So it's all about whether you fit the role. Now, when it comes to the role itself, one thing they do look for is good communication skills. Because at the end of the day, your role, if you were to put general management into one category, I would say the closest is project management, right? Your job is to get the job done. So what skills do you need for that? You need good communications. Now, if you've had any leadership roles in the past, that's always helpful. So by leadership roles, I mean in two contexts. One is if you've been part of a leadership program earlier, like in terms of work experience, then that's a good thing, or if you've had any positions of responsibility in your college. So something like president of a club, vice president of a club. If those things are there, it's helpful. But again, these are not mandatory, right? Most German companies have a long drawn out process lasting 4 to 5 rounds, and they tend to begin with an application form. That application form is your first barrier. So more than your CV, what matters is how you fill that application form and how you approach the application process in general.
Right. Guys, so I'm sure that all of you have already understood that this is a very, very informal and interactive session. So please do keep on posting your doubts and queries in the chat box and we'll be taking them up. Right. So moving on, Anindya, can you tell us any courses or certifications that they can do now that they have a couple of months in their hands and before the SIP process also officially starts, there is some time in their hands, right? So anything that you feel might be relevant.
So it depends wholly on your profile. Now, if your profile is say finance oriented, I would say make that a strength for yourself. So these roles in their processes, what they explore is whether or not you've followed whatever you want to, right? So if you have a finance background, right, have you done all it takes in finance? If you have, that's always a positive thing. So it's not a specific course or a specific certification. Whichever field you found interesting, do your best in that field. Is it whether it's through internships or through courses or in any other way? If people can have a totally like they can have a CV which is very very focused on finance or very focused on marketing, and that's also fine. Or if you have a very balanced CV, that's also fine. But at the end of the day, whatever you've done, even if it's something not academic, right? Even if it's something not related to a particular sector, even if it's a sport, or even if it's something related to a cultural thing, like dance or music, if you've done well in that, make sure that you're able to highlight that properly in your CV. That's it. Because
Right.
that process explores your strengths rather than your weaknesses.
That makes absolute sense. I'm taking a question from Saloni Bhagwani, and she's asking, what are the day-to-day operations in general management? Like, what does a day in a general manager's life look like?
Right. So this is again the answer for this could be very different for even my batchmates within task, right? Because all depends on the kind of project you've been assigned and the company you've been assigned. Because the Genman roles across, okay, broadly speaking, Genman roles limited companies, right? Limited companies, limited placements. If you look at say consulting as a sector, you know that at least 1/4 of the batch will probably go there, right? But in Genman, the hiring is far lesser. The numbers are lesser, and the life can be very very different. So I'll compare. Okay, I'll give you an example from my life, right? So I worked with TCS. There the work culture was very different. I was working mostly online because the team was US based, so it was 6 hours a day max, right? At Air India I was working in a very hectic space because we were doing a brand launch where we had a deadline to meet. So there were times when I worked 14-15 hours a day. At Tata Steel, again, in the first 2 months of the project, I was probably working 7 hours a day, and then it ramped up to 15, 16 because uh, I mean, that was my fault because I hadn't done the project well till then. So that was on me. But again, it can be very, very different. And it depends on the company you're working with and the domain that you've been assigned to. So it will be totally different.
So, Anindya, there are no work hour related issues here in this field. Like in consulting, we all know it's a bit work heavy, when in some profiles that finance offers, right? So,
Hmm.
is it not the same here? Can it be, does it change from the project or how is it?
It will change depending on the project and the criticality of the project. It will vary, but it will never go. I mean, it will never touch consulting levels. At least not in the Tata Group. That that much I can guarantee you. It will never ever come close to IB or consulting. Because see, the general in most Tata companies, it's a very 10 to 6 kind of job, right? And even in other Genman roles like Aditya Birla Group, Mahindra, mostly 10 to 7, 10 to 8, across basically all the companies, right? So it's not going to be very like a work-life balance isn't going to get turned upside down. But as for the day-to-day life, it totally depends on the project design.
So I think one point I want to add about general management is in the initial couple of years, there could be slight travel. It could because of the different stints.
Oh yeah.
It is in TAC, it is in Mahindra. So every 3-4 months, you could be expected to go to different city, possibly. Sometimes it is coincidence that you might be based out of same city. So during my Mahindra, so I worked in Mahindra also for 2.5 years. At that point of time, I used to see most of the GMC candidates in Mahindra. It's called as GMC.
Yeah.
They get they get sent to different business units. So they get to spend time in, let's say, automobile division. They get to spend time in Mahindra Club also, and Mahindra Finance. Mahindra has different verticals. In certain cases they also get to send to foreign countries also. So इसके लिए ready हो रहना पड़ता है बच्चों को. And regarding work hours, I think pretty much it's 10 to 7 or 10 to 6 sort of arrangements. And in fact, in Mahindra, there is a rule that you are not allowed to travel post 7 p.m. So on road, मतलब आप फोर व्हीलर लेके जा रहे हो या कंपनी का यूज कर रहे हो, यू आर नॉट अलाउड टू ट्रैवल आफ्टर 7 p.m. So in that way, these are good work cultures I want to emphasize. But आपको 2-3 साल के लिए you should be ready to move to different cities or different business units for sure.
Right. So most of these conglomerates have a stint-based system wherein what they do is uh, you have different projects in different companies within the group, 3 months usually, 2 to 3 months lasting, uh, and the location can change, your domain will change, and it can be within the country, it can be outside the country. So for Air India, I traveled abroad quite frequently. It was a very travel-heavy stint because we had to do a brand launch globally. So it was a very travel heavy stint. Similarly, one of my friends who was working in Titan, her project was new market expansion. So for that, to discover new markets, she had to travel to the UK and to Dubai, where she stayed for I think a month each. So travel heavy again, depending on the project, but you will most definitely have some amount of travel involved, especially because you're changing your project location, project and your domain and the company. So now, typically, most of the Tata companies and even for other conglomerates, it is Mumbai based. But again, that depends. That's if you get a role, if your project is based in the head office. Now, if it's a regional project, right, then you'll have to travel to tier two, tier three cities as well. So for my Tata Steel stint, it was a supply chain and finance project. I traveled all across North India, Ludhiana, Chandigarh. I went to Kashmir, to Jammu, to Himachal to visit the plants. So these companies usually give you a full experience, wherein for the first half of the project, they want you to understand the problem statement at the grassroots level. So to understand that problem, you'll have to travel. So if you're planning to stick to one city, that I don't think it will work out that way.
Makes sense, makes sense. So I think what both of you also said is that, it can depend on the project that you're doing, but yeah, it is always a good idea to be ready for travel, at least in the initial 2 to 3 years that, you're starting your job, right? Ananya, now that we're on the topic, can you also talk a little bit about the projects that you've done? So you mentioned that you've traveled abroad for Air India for a brand launch, and you've worked with other projects as well. So any project that is close to your heart, which you can share with us so that we can get a more deeper insight into the work life.
All right. So I think the project which I enjoyed the most was definitely Air India, but not because of the travel, but because of the fact that I got I was responsible for the brand launch, and it's almost so all the airport activations was on my end, and basically the placing, the development, the creation, development, and final sampling and QA of all brand assets. So what I mean by brand assets is can be anything. So from a billboard to hoarding to something we called Q tops, anything that you see at an airport which has the Air India logo. So from the time you enter the airport to the time you leave the destination airport, anything that you see which has the Air India logo on it, that is a brand asset to us. So the placement of all of these assets at I think around 60 plus airports, that was my task. Coming back to the question, we essentially had a very tight deadline. So why I enjoyed that project was because brand management and marketing is pretty like that's pretty much my target area. That's what I want to work in the future as well. So that was a really fun project for me. I got to meet a lot of new people, and I worked with people across the entire like across the entire chain of stakeholders. My manager was the chief customer experience officer. I was working with him and the CEO, and I was also working with the airport level deputies, people who were working as check-in staff, everybody. So we had to change everything, right? Like we had to change the logos everywhere. We had to change the tonality. We were changing the meal plans within the flights. So it was a lot of processes at the same time, and it was basically working with close to 7 to 8 different teams had to work in tandem to get it done. So it was a very hectic experience, but at the end, it gave me confidence that I can actually work 14, 15 hours. Because earlier I used to think anything above 10 hours is something I can't do. Like I physically cannot work above 10 hours. But I realized that if I enjoy the work, I won't realize that the time is gone. So I think that was my best experience so far.
It's really great to hear that, you really enjoyed working so many hours and it did not even feel like it. So moving on, Anandya, we have a question from Darshit Sachdev. And he asks that what are the exit opportunities after a Gen Man? Because at the end, we are not specialist in any of the field. Okay.
Right. So no, fair question. So the thing is कि your general management wala thing where you work across companies, across domains, that is usually, I mean, I know for sure in TASIF's and ABG's case, it is for 1 year. Right? Your first year is where you will do three months projects. After your first year, you will you can choose, at least in TAS, I know you have choice. If not choice, in other companies they allocate, but in TAS you have a choice to choose any one company and one domain. So, for example, I've worked in TCS, Air India's, Tata Steel, Tata Chemicals, right? So it's not limited to those companies. Let's say I like Titan as a company and I want to work as a brand manager there, and that role opens up. So then I can choose that role. Now the way task works is you can choose to switch your company and your role once a year after your first year. First year में तो है कि 3 months में you will get different companies anyways. After that, you can choose to stick to one industry. You can choose to stick to one domain. So if you want to build an expertise, you want to build a deeper level of knowledge into a particular industry, it's on you. So a lot of people like experimenting for longer. Like I know people who have changed their companies every 1 to 2 years for the first 5 years of their career in task. But there are also people who stick to the same company for 5 years. So it's totally on you. As for exit options, tag wise, I would say task ka to like it's like saying MBB in consulting or HUL in marketing. Tag wise, it has the same value. You will get the same exit options, similar exit options. But exit options, whether it's consulting, finance, or any company, any domain, your exit options will be based on the work you do, right? So even like there's this trope key consulting has the best exit options. That is true, but only if you've worked in the sector you're aiming for. I mean, if you work mostly in healthcare DD projects, so you're not going to get Microsoft after McKinsey just because you have McKinsey. So similarly, in TAS or in any other Genman company, if you worked in say FMCG, right? Let's say I go to TCPL, which is consumer products, and I work in FMCG in marketing. Then in marketing, the world's open to me. Also depends on my CV, my contacts, my sources for referrals. It's very subjective down the line, but yeah, exit options are good.
Right, right. That makes sense. Anindya Vishwaja Parikh is asking, I am from an engineering background, thinking of a major in finance and minor in marketing. Is it suitable for general management roles? So we
Okay,
want to
so
understand the importance of a major and minor selected in an MBA.
So most MBA colleges, at least the tier one colleges that I know, they don't really have a major minor system, right? At the end of the day, your degree is just gonna say MBA. SP Jan does give you either a PGDM in marketing or a PGDM in finance, where you have to make that choice beforehand. Later, I mean here, okay, in Calcutta we had a major system in the sense that you can choose in your second year. So first year is all compulsory courses, second year is electives. So you can choose to do more electives in one domain, right? But for the most part, that's not going to have any impact on your placements, right? Because your CV is not going. At most, you will have one single point which says major in marketing, and that's not going to have a massive impact on your placements. So, for example, if I come from an arts background, right? And if I were to, for some reason, do a lot of finance electives and write finance major in MBA, I'm not going to get into Bank of America. I have a bachelor's in political science, so it's not going to matter either ways. It's not going to have a massive impact on your placements, basically.
Right, right. Okay, so moving on, Pranathi is asking, what is the probability of a fresher landing up in a general management role? And do the organization prefer work ex people over freshers? I think that's a very valid question.
Yeah. So TAS doesn't have a preference system based on WorkX. In fact, they have a WorkX limit of 4 years. If you have anything above 4 years, you're not allowed to apply. But that is, I think, unique for TAS. In other companies, in most Genman companies, they don't have any restrictions. I'm a fresher, so I mean, there wasn't any restriction for me. and but my peers, some of them have WorkX. So there's no right or wrong in this. You can't go wrong with or without WorkX. Very few, some Genman companies have a WorkX requirement. I remember Hinduja having a WorkX requirement of 2 years, and there was one more company, but those are few. Right, out of the total options, there's probably one or two companies. But now, as a whole, Genman mein there are lesser companies. Like, I can probably count them on my fingers. There's PAS, ABG, Mahindra, Saint-Gobain, JSW, Reliance has started their program, and then there's Bajaj Finserv, Hinduja, and CK Birla. SR is also there, and Vedanta 11. Okay, Vedanta is there 11, and then there's one which is the Imar group, but then Imar has one person per year, so you can't exactly aim for it. But then you can't aim for any Genman company in that context. So there's 10 to 11 companies, and one or two have workers requirements.
Right. So a limited number of companies, but there are still a lot of ample opportunities for people who genuinely want to get into Genman. So Ananya, Vishwaja is again asking that what should people going to tier 2 colleges do for getting into such roles?
Now, see, most of these roles hire only from tier one colleges, and by tier one, I mean the top 10 to 11 colleges. That's usually the case. And they are restrictive because there's no lateral hiring in most of these roles. So it's not like if I have a couple of years of work after my MBA and then I want to get into TAS, that's not how it works. TAS hires only through campus placements. And so do most of these other roles. Like you can get into the company, right? Not TAS, but like let's say in ABG, you can get into ABG as a group, but you will be able to get into a particular company. You won't have access to that leadership program. So that is an issue with most N-man programs. So tier one, top 10, top 11 colleges, they're the ones who have access.
Right, right. Makes sense. So Astha is asking, since you are also a fresher, so Astha is asking that how is it that we can, have a profile development for a fresher? So while we're talking about it, Anand, it would be great if you can also tell anything specific that you added in your CV that, probably helped you stand out from other people in your.
Uh, I would say I had a bit of which particularly for TAS, I had a bit of an unfair advantage because when I was a badminton player, my first sponsor was Tata and my second sponsor was Air India. So I had a big conversation point for interviews at least. So that was there. But all in all, CV wise, I would say if you're a fresher, just if you have a couple of internships, live projects in your CV, make sure that whatever you've done well. That's pretty much it. And if you get into MBA, if you can get into a leadership role in terms of clubs, that should be a helpful thing for you. But again, CV building, profile building, that's something that will come into play a little later. Because in most of these Genman roles, their application processes are long enough. And CVs are important for most MBA roles, but from what I've seen, at least for Genman roles, they typically tend to look at your application form for that role much more intently than your CV. Because they're not again they're not looking for a particular skill in your CV, right? Like they're not looking for a CFA or a particular internship or a particular skill set. So your application form needs to be well structured. So that is what
Yeah.
is of like primary importance.
Yeah. Yeah. Guys, Satish sir has also done his Genman role in Mahindra. So, Satish sir, would you also want to add anything to this?
I think earlier एक question पूछा गया ना कि मतलब so it was not I did not join Mahindra from the campus. I went to Ola Cabs. Then laterally I have joined Mahindra's one of the firms. But uh, in Mahindra, from the pay salary point of view, they give you the same salaries. They won't
Yeah,
differentiate you based on whether you came through GMC, that is General Management Program, or you came laterally. From the roles point of view, uh, the limit is 2 years. Somebody who came laterally to change the role, to change the company. And anybody who is from the general management point of, I mean, who joined as a GMC, they can choose to prefer to change company or function within a year. So ये थोड़े से rules अलग थे and एक leadership mentoring होती है which is there only for GMC candidates. What do I mean by GMC candidates? जो hire होते हैं from directly from the campus, they get allocated CXO as a direct mentor, and they get to uh, they get exposed to certain board of the जो बोर्ड की मीटिंग्स होती हैं उसमें भी उनको एक्सपोजर मिलता है, बट जो नॉन जीएमसी रूट के थ्रू जाते हैं उनको नहीं मिलता है. सो दीज आर 2-3 डिफरेंसेस दैट आई कैन पॉइंट आउट. And was it very difficult for me to get into through a non-GMC route? I would say it was not that much difficult. It is possible through अनिंद्या भी बता रहे थे ना कि आपके अगर राइट connects हैं, right, if you are sitting at the right hiring manager or the right business unit, then of course you get preferred. And opportunity wise मुझे कोई major दिक्कत नहीं हुआ है. I mean, was there any major advantage or disadvantage? I have not seen much. वो आपको जो perks मिलते हैं वो सेम ही होते हैं. जैसे महिंद्रा में जो भी कोई भी काम कर रहा है तो every year of work they do, they get 5 nights of Club Mahindra का मतलब vacation nights, right? So सब सबको सेम ही मिलता है.
Right. So for TAS, so TAS in itself is not a company, right? Like TAS's only job is to source TAS officers. That is their only task. TAS summer interns, TAS officers. It's just a hiring platform. You can get into any Tata company laterally. Like if I'm say I've come through TAS and after my first year I'm sticking to say Titan, right? Anybody can come into Titan laterally. Now, as for the advantage afforded through like because I'm through TAS, the advantage that I get is that since it's a leadership program, I will have again similar to Satish sir's answer. I will have access to more. See, first of all, the one thing is definitely applicable is that the TAS batches themselves, right? It's a very old program and around 30-ish% of Tata Group C-suite of officials are through TAS. So you get access to it. You get access to that level of leadership. So you have access. B, in terms of perks, again, salary-wise, people coming in laterally into a Tata Group company can have the same salary as me, can even have a better salary or a lower salary, depending on their negotiation, depending on the role they're coming in. But my advantage is that since it's a leadership program, my promotion track will be officially or unofficially, it tends to be a little bit faster. So the trajectory that they show us is your first year is your training year, right? When you do your stints and across different companies, then once you stick to a company or when you're there for a year and so on and so forth, your trajectory is shown as like your year 2 to year 4 is your managerial era, year 4 to 7 is senior manager, 7 to 10 is AVP, 10 to 12 is VP, and then 12 plus me, you can reach C-suite. Now, if you compare it to any other firm, this is a very, very accelerated trajectory. Because if you look at consulting, partners the highest level, right? 18 to 20 years. If you look at FMCG CEO, C-suite level, that's another 20 plus years. So in that sense, it is very accelerated. So you have that advantage. Plus, of course, unofficially, I would say there is this advantage that task officers look out for other task officers. So you will have access. Also, we have access to the task portal, right? So that in itself is a huge advantage, which is the flexibility that we have. So a Titan employee can't necessarily like they won't have direct access to a portal which allows them to switch to any Tata Group company. If they do it through a referral or through their contact, that's obviously an option. But I have access to a portal which will allow me to directly switch. So I won't have to resign from this company and then find a job in another company. I'll get switched internally. So that's the difference that we have. And perks wise, again, the group wide perks that you have, stuff like 20% off on Starbucks, 50% off on Taj Hotels, that is available to almost every Tata employee after a certain level. So in that sense, perks wise and salary wise, it will roughly be the same. The one advantage I would give TAS over a regular employee is that we get accommodation. So accommodation is obviously a big cost-based advantage because if you're staying on rent, I mean, it's another added cost to your life, right? So that's an advantage. But apart from that, no other significant advantages. Apart from the accelerated career trajectory.
Mm. Of course, that's a huge advantage, accelerated career trajectory that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Anindya, अनिंद्या, अमन अगस्त्य इज आस्किंग, क्योंकि हम बात कर रहे थे क्रॉस कंपनी स्विचिंग के बारे में. सो अमन इज आस्किंग दैट इफ समवन हैज वर्कड इन टाटा ग्रुप अर्लियर, डज दैट इफेक्ट द प्लेसमेंट्स और फेवरेबिलिटी इन अ सीवी?
In I wouldn't. So I hope not. Officially, it doesn't, right? But because they're going to look at the quality of your work. But I would say, you can have, it's luck based. So for example, so the task process, the way it works is, first there's an application form, then there's an online assessment, and then people get shortlisted for group discussion. So group discussion ke baad you have a presentation round where you present, if it's final placements, you present your summer internship. If it's summer internship, they give you a case to solve, and then you have your final interview. So across all of these rounds, the people evaluating you, like GD ka moderator, presentation mein, the person who's sitting there to who you're presenting to, your interviews, these are all conducted only by C-suite officials of Tata Group, right? So let's say you've worked at Tata Steel, right? And the person interviewing you, just it happens that that's an employee of Tata Steel, right? Like he's the CEO or CFO or CX, any CXO level official from Tata Steel. So it's an added conversation point, right? So you can benefit from that. It can also work adversely, right? Like what if they expect you to know more about Tata Steel than you actually do? So it can go both ways. It can act as a disadvantage and an advantage. But inherently during shortlisting, it doesn't have a direct point weightage.
Right. So, Ananya, a couple of questions that I have from my side. So, are there any misconceptions, which, prevail in the field of general management? As we already talked, it's uh, probably a relatively newer field, right? Just like product management or, marketing, finance, and consulting has been around for years and years now. But, any misconceptions around this field that you would probably want to break, any myths that you would want to address?
Um, I wouldn't say that Genman as a sector has not been there, because TAS has been there since 1950s. So it's been there for a while, and newer programs have cropped up like Reliance and Adani. They have started their own leadership programs, so that is there. Why it remains undiscovered as a sector is due to the less number of people they hire, right? And the fact that they hire only at B school level. So prior to, like before, if you delve a little deeper into the history of TAS, before IIM ABC existed, they used to hire only from Oxford and Cambridge universities, right? And then there was a phase where they hired through newspaper advertisements. Like they would put out an advertisement and have an exam like UPSC. So the systems have changed over the years, but all in all, the hiring number is something. So they have there's a rule, and there's now it's not an official rule, but at no point has TAS ever crossed more than 1,000 people, right? 1,000 in terms of total TAS officers actively serving. At no point has it crossed 1,000. So in a company, in a role which hires so few, and Tata Group as a whole doesn't market itself that much, right? Like a lot of companies, they hold a lot of events, case comms, so on, and they hire from the UG level. So again, they're more well known. So because it doesn't do all of these activities, it's not that well known. Misconceptions wise, I would say ki people don't know enough to have any misconceptions. But and the hiring process remains a little opaque for most people, because there's no clear skill set required. But I would say the benefits that you get from it are pretty good. Like if you compare it to any classic role that you get after MBA, it's equal to or better than many roles in terms of work-life balance, in terms of overall career trajectory. If you are able to, again, task in itself, the career trajectory can be very, very different for two task officers, right? From the same batch itself. So I'll give you an example. There's someone who I know in task who's 10 years my senior, right? And he's still AVP of Trent. Trent is the West Side and Zudio, the clothing division of Tata. So he's still AVP, and it's been 10 years now, which is a little longer than what they project. Then at the same time, I know someone who's 3 years my senior, and she's already general manager of Tata Motors. She's already GM, right? So it depends a lot on your performance. It also depends on which space you're in. Is it a growing space, right? So Tata Motors, EV is a rapidly growing sector, and she was there at the right time at the right place, and thus she grew. Similarly, 1MG, our Tata 1MG recently acquired startup, if it's in a very growing space right now. Air India is in a growing space right now. So in any companies which have a lot of growth incoming, if you happen to be there at the right time, you will have a faster than normal career trajectory. But if you're in, say, a Tata Steel, where all the processes are already justified, right? So, and this is just not just for TAS and not just for Genman in general. It's mostly for any company. There are only two kind of flows that you have, right? One is an optimizer and one is a change maker. These are very broad terms, but an optimizer is essentially in a company where all the processes are defined and you have a very select set of tasks to perform. where you can make incremental changes in the company. So for example, if I'm in a Tata Steel in a sales role or a marketing role or a finance role, the changes that I will make will impact the company by a fraction, right? You will add a little bit to the company because it's an old company, it's a massive company, everything is already set. Versus if you go to a company that is facing a growth spurt, right, where you will be a key change maker. So if you're in that key change maker space, then you'll have a faster career trajectory. If you, but again, it's a high risk, high reward thing. Because if you make too many errors there, so then that's a bit of a pitfall. Whereas in a
Yeah,
optimizer role where you have to make incremental changes, you can afford to make errors.
of course. So I think guys, we're really lucky to have such an insider perspective from
Can I,
someone who has worked
can I,
in tasks. Yes, sir. I
Surely?
saw your mic going unmute. I was just going to come to you. Satish sir has something to add. Yes, sir. Please go on.
तो एक मिथ है जो हायरिंग प्रोसेसेस के दौरान स्टूडेंट्स बहुत मिस्टेक करते हैं, which is about psychometric test. So very specifically, Mahindra could in the part of the process when they come to campus, they also conduct psychometric test. Students try to game it कि अरे ये जनरल मैनेजमेंट का प्रोग्राम के लिए कर रहे हैं, तो आई शुड बी लुक्ड इन ए पर्टिकुलर वे. I would say it is need not be necessary. So I would suggest don't try to game it. Whatever you are, try to just be that. And most likely you will be able to get shortlist also. So don't worry. मतलब गेमिफाई करने का कोई सेंस नहीं बनता है, क्योंकि हमारे विंग में हमने बहुत प्लानिंग वैनिंग करके बहुत गेमिफाई किया था कि नहीं नहीं ऐसे ऐसे हम सब ऐसे करेंगे वैसे करेंगे, सबके सब बाहर निकल गए. एंड उसके
Right.
बाद
सर ये
अंदर
हमारे में भी हुआ था, एक बंदे का एग्जाम 4-5 लोग साथ में बैठ के दे रहे हैं, तो मतलब वो मजा आता था एग्जाम देने का। उसमें गेम्स है, ये करना है, पजल वजल है, तो मजा आता है वो एग्जाम देने में।
बट वो मतलब ज्यादा शांतपत्ति दिखाने का सेंस नहीं बना है, बिकॉज इवेंचुअली यू कैन गेट ड्रॉप्ड. वही
Right.
है
I
आई
agree with
एग्री
that.
सर। सर
So
हमारे में एक एग्जाम था, आई थिंक एबीजी का एग्जाम था, एंड उसमें कुछ नंबर्स रिमेम्बर करने का एग्जाम था। और उस टाइम पे वी स्टार्टेड नोटिंग डाउन द नंबर्स, और फिर फ्लो में हमें पता नहीं चला, और हम 15-20 नंबर याद कर रहे थे, और इवेंचुअली दैट पर्सन डिड नॉट गेट अ शॉर्टलिस्ट बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली द कंप्यूटर कॉट की हम वो कर रहे हैं। बट या आई एग्री विथ व्हाट यू सेड। अनिंदर, यू आर
so
सेइंग।
So here I agree and I disagree. So for example, अब task के process को लेके जो myth है कि given that Tata as a group is an ethical group focused on CSR and the way the Tata group is designed, they have Tata Trusts as its center, which is essentially a non-profit. It's a NGO, right? In that sense, like they do CSR. So 33% of annual profits go to Tata Trusts. तो अब given that it has this ethical image, कैंपस पे रहता था कि ओके एथिक्स इज सपोज टू बी समथिंग व्हिच इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, तो अब उनके जीडी में जाके हम बस एथिक्स एथिक्स की बातें करेंगे. एंड दैट इज नॉट गोना वर्क आउट बिकॉज जो मॉडरेटर है दे गोना फिगर आउट कि यू आर ट्राइंग टू गेम द जीडी, कि जो भी क्वेश्चन मिल रहा है, जो भी प्रोसेस आ रहा है, whatever business case they're giving you or any problem that they're giving you, you're always taking the maximum ethic based approach कि profit ignore कर दिया, सब ignore कर दिया. So that is something like if you try to game the system in that way, it won't work out. As for psychometric tests, जैसे ABG का test you mentioned, right? So it has वो numbers वाला test है, then there's so in the tests which have a lot of mathematical components to it, right? Like I think ABG had it, right? They had a place where you have to do like DILR and quant type stuff. तो उसमें तो मैंने बैठाया कैट का टॉपर, देख मुझे तो शॉर्टलिस्ट आया है. वहां तो आई डिसएग्री कि इन सम वेज यू कैन, बट ओनली वेयर अ फिक्स्ड आंसर इज रिक्वायर्ड, right? If it's a proper sum that you have to solve, again this is bad advice, okay? I'm not telling you guys to cheat, mat karna, but or if you do it, then definitely don't go to a time seminar and say it. But most of all, I would say ki if there's any leeway there, like if it's a personality based test, right? Psychometric वाला जो test, proper psychometric test, like Nestle does it. Nestle has a Korn Ferry test. So sir rightly said कि if you try to project a certain personality, you will likely fail. You have to be really good at it to game it. या तो you achieve that level of expertise कि तुम पूरे campus को shortlist दिला सकते हो. So if you reach that level, then it's great. Because see, Nestle, the psychometric tests do evaluate in the sense that would you be good at sales? That's the central question that that test answers. So for that, if you answer questions in a way where it seems like you're an extrovert and you want to talk to more people and you enjoy that kind of a job, So you can portray that sort of image. But the problem is that the same question is asked in many different ways, right? And if you're not able to figure it out, so you have to have a very, very good command over language. So if I ask you, for example, कि Survi, are you in a party, would you say you talk to more people or less people, right? I ask you one question, तुमने बोला कि ठीक है, I'll say more because it will project an extrovert वाला personality. Then उसके बाद then we'll give you a question, okay, in an office-based setting, do you like to interact with a lot of people or do you like to interact with just your team? Now this question will come 20-30 questions later. तब तक तुम भूल चुके हो कि यहाँ पे मैंने क्या जवाब दिया था. So that can work out at your disadvantage. But if you actually do manage to think of if you do manage to keep track of your answers and you know कि, okay, this is a similar question and you're good at English, that's honestly what it is, then you might just manage. Because I mean, I was part of a friend group where we were giving the FMCG वाले जितने psychometric tests थे, we would sit together and do it, and हमारा shortlist आया था. So but that's again, it's a risky proposition because या तो सब में shortlist आएगा ना कि कहीं नहीं आएगा, right? And कहीं नहीं आएगा तो बहुत बुरा लगेगा. So I would say, all in all, my advice would be try to just be yourself. Because why I say that is that psychometric test also helps you determine whether you're good for that role, right? Because you don't need to get all shortlists. All shortlists लाना लगता है उस टाइम पे कि यार कितना flex हो जाएगा. I'll be able to sit in front of everyone and everybody will think, yeah, I have 20 shortlists, 30 shortlists. But at the end of the day, अगर तुम्हें वहां जाना नहीं है, that's an added headache. That's an added interview that you have to give. That's another GD you have to go to. So why add that headache if you're not meant for a sales role? If you are actually someone who doesn't want to communicate with that many people, तो shortlist लेके भी क्या कर लिया? और अगर गलती से नस्ले चले गए और गलती से सेल्स करना पड़ गया और दिन में स्कूटी पे बैठ के डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स के पास जाना पड़ गया हफ्ते में 3 दिन, तो you're not gonna have a good life. So why force yourself to get shortlist? So, but it happens in an MBA context. Everybody judges other people by their shortlist. That tends to happen a lot. So, but don't fall for it. I would say you're there for yourself. You're not there for other people and वो तुम्हारे बारे में क्या सोचते हैं. And that is something a lot of people get mixed into. So as long as you have that control from the beginning, when you know कि okay, I'm here for a very specific purpose, so then you'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I think I would really agree with that. Also, I would like to mention Anindya कि ना काफी कंपनीज में ऐसे जैसे आपने बताया ना कि साइकोमेट्रिक टेस्ट में ये होता है. जैसे Amazon था,
Hmm.
Amazon came to MDI and there was a gen man role that they opened again. So
Yeah.
they had this whole psychometric test and they had like 100 odd questions, and it's a very difficult thing to keep a track of your answers and the personality that you're trying to project, right? So वो सेम ही क्वेश्चन कान ऐसे पकड़ेंगे हर जगह से पकड़ेंगे, इट गेट्स रियली डिफिकल्ट, राइट? सो आई थिंक अ वेरी वैलिड पॉइंट व्हाट यू मेड इज कि बी ट्रू टू द एग्जाम, बिकॉज इवेंचुअली इट्स जस्ट दैट वन शॉट इज दैट यू नीड टू कन्वर्ट. एंड अगर आप ऐसे कंपनी में जाते हो जहां पे यू आर नॉट योर सेल्फ, यू आर नॉट कंफर्टेबल विद द रोल, इट्स जस्ट नॉट गोइंग टू वर्क द वे दैट यू थॉट ऑफ इट, राइट? सो गाइज, हम सही में ये प्रोपोगेट करना चाहेंगे कि एग्जाम में चीटिंग मत करो. Going ahead, Dave is asking, Anindya,
ये वो
now we
वाला
are
हो गया
nearing the
कि
end of.
ये वाला हो गया, हमने तो बिल्ली खा ली, आप वेजिटेरियन रहना. चलो, सॉरी गाइस, नॉट
इसके
प्रमोटिंग
आगे मैं नहीं
इट.
बोल पाऊंगी. ओके अदित्य, नाउ थोड़ा सा सेशन वी आर नियरिंग टू द एंड, तो थोड़ा सा इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चंस के बारे में बात कर लेते हैं. सो देव समानी इज आस्किंग, व्हाट इज द स्टार्टिंग पैकेज इन द जनरल मैनेजमेंट जॉब?
So starting packages vary between, I would say, 24 CTC to 33 CTC. It's a broad range, but again, it depends on the company. So TAS and ABG fall on the higher end of the spectrum. If you look at Reliance, Adani, those companies fall at the lower end. So that is the variance there.
Right. So there's a follow-up question from Pranati again that okay, so Pranati is asking, there are two questions, Anindya. Pranati is
Mhm.
asking that how is the compensation for GMC roles? And Pratham is asking that does the work ex have any bearing on salary negotiations during placements?
Okay, you know what I have? I think हमारा वो placement वाला chart है मेरे पास इसी laptop में. I'll just pull it up and I'll give you the exact figure. So hold on.
I'll just make you the co-host so that you can share your screen if you need to.
It's in my phone. So just 1 second. She's asking about Mahindra, right?
No, she's asking about GMC roles and work ex का अगर कोई negotiations के time पे
Okay.
होता है advantages. I've made you the
हाँ, so
co-host.
actually negotiation नाम का कोई चीज होता नहीं है, they don't allow it.
And they
Campuses में
don't.
एक फॉर्मूला आता है, that is let's say 28 lakhs अगर कंपनी का स्ट्रक्चर है, they will say 28 lakhs plus 1 lakh for every 1 year of work ex up to a limit of 3 years. तो अगर किसी का 1 year 0 years वर्क एक्स है तो उसको 28 लाख मिलेगा, किसी का 1 year वर्क एक्स है तो 28 + 1 मिलेगा, और किसी का 10 साल भी वर्क एक्स है अगर वो सेलेक्ट हो चुका है 28 + 3 मिलेगा, क्योंकि उन्होंने लिमिट 3 रख रखा है. सो देर इज अ
सर तो
फॉर्मेट. यहाँ
इसमें
पे
एक फॉलोअप क्वेश्चन, सॉरी टू इंटरप्ट सर,
कोई
एक फॉलोअप
नेगोशिएशन नहीं
क्वेश्चन है
होता.
इसमें सर, रेलेवेंसी वाला भी होता है फैक्टर जो मेनली
देर इज
कंसल्टेंसी में होता है कि रेलेवेंट वर्क एक्स का.
यहाँ पे सो ड्यूरिंग एट माई टाइम देर वॉज कैंपस हायरिंग में नेगोशिएशन नाम का कोई वर्ड नहीं. All thing is either you have to take it and or leave it. Nothing leave it वाला भी ऑप्शन नहीं होता है, क्योंकि इट्स अ बाइंडिंग राइट. यू हैव साइंड दैट डॉक्यूमेंट कि मैं इंटरव्यू में जा रहा हूं तो ऑफर मिलेगा तो मैं ज्वाइन करूंगा, राइट. नेगोशिएशन का कोई रोल नहीं होता है यहाँ पे, अनलेस एंड अनटिल लाइक तुम बहुत ही स्टड हो और कंपनी डेडली तुम्हें ही चाहती है, मतलब वो दैट्स अ रेयर सिनेरियो.
Right. So, and as for, see, when you apply, prior to application, you will have access to a JD, which will have the exact compensation structure, base kitna hai, variable kitna, that will be given to you. Right. So if you don't find it adequate, don't apply. Right. So that is there. But apart from in negotiation wala, again, I think I know only of one company who did it during my placement cycle, and that too it was in lateral placements. So lateral placements is essentially companies who have a work ex requirement. Usually 2 to 3 years वाले जितने भी होते हैं उनका एक अलग से placement round करा देते हैं prior to final placements. So in those companies, some companies allow negotiation, and but again very few. So Zomato came in for a product manager role in my final placements in my during that time, and they had a pay range of 21 to 26 lakhs per annum CTC. And वो फिर depending on your CV and depending on, they had a specific round negotiation round करके. So if you are able to negotiate a better salary, sure. But if you're not able to negotiate a better salary, you'll still have to go with it if they give you an offer. So offer is still binding. So negotiation scope is not there. That is something that will come into play once you change your job for the first time. That then it might come into play. But campus mein the agreements that they sign with platforms are such that you have to adhere to the exact compensation that they are offering. If you want to apply, apply. If you don't want to apply, don't apply.
Yeah, makes sense. So now that we're on the topic of applying, Coach Sony is asking that how do you get enough exposure in order to know where do you want to get placed, like Gen Man or Consult or Sales?
Right. So when you it's a good question. So if you were in your UG, I would have said try to explore internships, right? But I'm assuming this crowd is all just pre-MBA wala crowd, right? So okay. So for you, you can obviously get more insights through your seniors who've done internships, right? You can get insights through them. Apart from that, you can reach out to people who are doing that role. The way the session is being conducted, right? You can reach out through LinkedIn or through other mediums to alumni or any other way you have. Reach out to those people, try to figure out what they do during their day, right? Try to figure that out and then try to match it to your preferences. So again, marketing, right? Marketing is a field where everyone thinks, okay, I go into marketing. Even I used to think this. Why I started with marketing as a aim was because I used to think, okay, marketing, I'll go in and I'm going to be solving for whether to hire Ranbir Kapoor or Katrina Kaif for the next advertisement, right? That's going to be all glamorous and I'm going to have a great time. But that's not how it works. So then I realized, okay, I'll have to sit in Vrindavan and think about the next sales strategy and how to get more distributors. And then suddenly it wasn't that attractive anymore. So you have to talk to people who are working in that field, and that's how you'll be able to make a call. And apart from that, of course, within your MBA, you will have exposure to the subjects themselves. So you can get a bit of an insight into the kind of work that you'll have. Academics wise, again, not I don't think this is not a great opinion to have, but what you learn in a course academically, that's not going to have an immense benefit in your career. right? What you do in your career will be dictated by what you do in your career. Once you join a job, that's where you learn from the ground up. So I mean, and I'm sure Satish sir can relate to this. Marketing to us was taught Kotler से पढ़ाया था हमें. Kotler is a book which was published in the 80s, right? And so for a subject as dynamic as marketing, and this is all tier 1B schools like ABC across the board, ABC, KLI, everywhere. The textbooks that are used are typically old. So what you'll experience on the job is not going to have a lot of connection with your academics. For marketing GDs and interviews, they'll tell you to prepare for STP and 4P, which is essentially segmentation, targeting, positioning, and then 4P, which is product, price, ऐसे करके mix a promotion. So place. Now these are things which you're not all. This is a very specific case where you're launching a new product where you think about these things. When you go into a sales and marketing job, that's not something you're going to be thinking about on the daily, right? Similarly, even in consulting with the case books that you do, okay, we have a company, we have a startup, we have to make them grow by 10x. That's not what you're going to be doing in your daily life as a consultant. In most cases, what you're going to be doing is due diligence. You'll get a private equity company will come in, they'll say, we want to invest in this startup. Can you look at the financials and confirm for us, should we invest or not? So what you're going to be doing is 16 hours of Excel. And then you think about, अरे यार केस कॉम्स में तो ऐसा दिखाया था कि हम तो कंपनी चेंज करने वाले थे. It's not going to be the same. You reach that level very later on, right? Which is essentially 10 years, 8 to 10 years down your career, where you'll be able to make choices like, do we enter this market or not, right? So these are later stage choices. So to figure out what is being done in the first 2 to 3 years of your career, reach out to people of that sector and then make a call. And if you're still not able to get utna insights, honestly, I would say talk to more people. If not, then just try to secure an internship, even if it's a virtual internship. Try to secure an internship through LinkedIn or through Indeed, or there's a bunch of platforms, Prospel, Internshala. So even while I was doing my MBA, I did a couple of internships in brand management, which were virtual. So that gave me a better insight into why I want to be a part of the sector. I already had it in my head that I want to be a part of brand management, but even while I was doing it virtually, it gave me an experience into the life of the person managing me, and hence I made that call.
सतीश सर आप कुछ कह रहे थे?
नहीं, मैं तो बोलूंगा कि इट्स आई मीन ये एक फ्रेमवर्क होता है व्हेन यू आर एंटरिंग, बट आई वुड से a lot of people will be unclear even 5 years after MBA also. There
Yeah.
are my friends who have changed industries, functions even after MBA. So don't consider it as a linear journey. जो हमने कंसल्टिंग वाले सेशन में भी देखा था ना, नहीं प्रोडक्ट मैनेजमेंट वाले, कि उन्होंने अपना करियर चालू किया कंसल्टिंग, then he moved to finance, then he is in product
He
management.
moved to
So
marketing. Yeah.
हाँ marketing में गया. So it's a trial error, and then you find your own sweet spot, and then you stay there for a very long period of time. जैसे पहले in early of my career also, I changed company within a year. Then I am here for last 4 5 years, right? So maybe I have spotted my own comfort zone here, right? So trial and error, I would say. एंड ट्रायल एंड एरर का मतलब ये नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि हर
Yeah.
2 महीने में कंपनी चेंज कर दो, मतलब 2 साल इज अ गुड इनफ टाइम पीरियड टू नो वेदर यू वांट टू स्टे इन दैट सॉर्ट ऑफ इंडस्ट्री और दैट फंक्शन फॉर नेक्स्ट 20 years ऑफ योर लाइफ. दैट्स अ सफिशिएंट टाइम. सो
Yeah,
अभी
2 years,
उतना ज्यादा
2 years
स्ट्रेस
is
मत
good.
लो. हाँ, सो उतना ज्यादा स्ट्रेस मत लो अभी के लिए कि फर्स्ट ईयर में जाना है, अच्छी इंटर्नशिप लेनी है, अच्छा सीवी बनाना है, वो प्रायोरिटी रखो. सेकेंड ईयर में बेस्ड ऑन द इंटर्नशिप, जो आपके फ्रेंड्स विंगीज ने भी अलग अलग इंटर्नशिप की होगी, राइट? दे विल आल्सो शेयर देयर एक्सपीरियंसेस. उसकी बेसिस पे अपना ओपिनियन बना लो कि सेकेंड ईयर में यार मेरे को ये 2 4 इंडस्ट्रीज, ये 2 4 फंक्शंस या ये 2 4 चीजें मेरे को सही लगती है, आई विल प्रायोरिटाइज देम. एंड जब एक्चुअल प्लेसमेंट की बारी आएगी ना, इट इज अ लॉट अबाउट गेटिंग इनटू द, एवरीबडी विल गेट इनटू दैट मनी रेस. देयर आर माय फ्रेंड्स हु वेर सीएफएस और फिनांस के सारे कोर्सेस लिए थे, एंड ऑफ कोर्स उसको डे जीरो के दिन फिनांस का शॉर्टेज नहीं आया. द नेक्स्ट बेस्ट थिंग ही कुड डू इज he went into Reckitt Benckiser because Reckitt Benckiser pays heavily at campus. मतलब डेटॉल वाली जो कंपनी है ना, वो एफएमसीजी में बहुत पैसा भर भर के देती है, तो वो गया है एंड ही इज डूइंग फैबुलस देयर. मतलब वो बहुत खुश है आज वहां पे. So I would say कि but जबकि वो जब अपना करियर सोच रहा था, he might have been thinking कि मेरे को finance करना है, but he is doing fabulous in marketing, I would say.
Yeah.
So don't get too much bogged down कि मेरे को यही करना है. I would say eventually you will be required to do everything later on. अब वो मार्केटिंग में
Right.
ऐसा मतलब नहीं कि वो फिनांस यूज नहीं कर रहा है. ही माइट बी द मोस्ट स्केरी गाय फॉर डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स. ट्रेड मार्केटिंग में क्या स्कीम लगानी है, कंज्यूमर को कितना मतलब डिस्काउंट देना है, रॉ मटेरियल में कैसे पैसे दबाने हैं, मतलब ही वुड बी डूइंग ऑल दोस थिंग्स. फिनांस वाली चीजें कर रहा होगा अपने व्हेन ही इज द बीयू हेड फॉर वन ऑफ दोस रेकेट बेंचर्स डिवीजन. So, so don't get too much bogged down to one function, I would say.
You're extremely right.
Right,
And
sir. So,
I know exactly like similar cases. Like in fact, somebody who I know, she started her career in finance, and right now she is the marketing head for Bumble in India. So very different career trajectory. And even in my case, I had an aversion for finance because I come from an arts background and I don't like working with numbers, right? So I had this thing in my head कि finance तो नहीं करना है. But here in Tata Steel, I did supply chain and finance, and I realized that this is something I should know about. And this is an advice for everyone: कि finance basics you should know about. Right? So this is a course that will actually, and this is not for your CV, but for yourself, do a basic course in finance, because no matter what function you get into, what role you go into, consulting, product management is probably the only one in which you don't have to do a lot of finance, but in every other role you will have some touch of finance added, right? So, but as for career trajectory, no need to worry abhi. You can worry 5 years down the line, so there's a lot of time. And as for the part where I
right.
said reach out to people, uh, contrary to what is sold to the general public, MBA में you will have time to reach out to people and talk to people. बहुत time रहेगा. So 2 years is a long time. As long as you're not planning for ISP, then
Peer
it's a
learning,
shorter.
थोड़ी बहुत peer learning is a very powerful thing which an MBA really provides. Right. So essentially, I guess what all of us are saying is that, it's always a good idea to have a preference, but, we don't have to stick to it because, placements, as Anindya also mentioned in the first half of the session, that it's very random. You cannot be very picky about the roles that you get signed out into, right? So, Anindya, will be ending the session in the next 10 to 15 minutes, just the last couple of questions. So, Zahir Banglowala is asking that it's a profile related question, I guess. How did you get into content creation? And can you talk about your partnership with My Protein? And can you explain the process behind getting one?
Okay, so content creation for me, so I'm active both on Instagram and LinkedIn, although I'm far more active on LinkedIn nowadays. So how did I get into it? I don't think there was like a process which I followed. It's just that I like writing, and LinkedIn is a text-heavy platform. And Instagram was an easy fix because I was earlier, like when I was playing badminton, I used to get like videos from my tournaments and I would just post that. Then later, once I retired due to an injury, I was like done with badminton. I was like, okay, so I deleted all the badminton videos. Then it progressed to fitness. As for my protein reaches out to influencers on Instagram, and there's no process as such. They just reach out to you based on your reach and the kind of views you're getting, and they usually sign a deal with you for a, like they have a 10-year, 1-year deal, 2-year deal. They sign a deal with you ki you have to give an X amount of reels and X amount of stories per month, and in return you get itna stipend and itna product. That's pretty much it.
Okay. Anindya, couple of last set of questions from my end. Anindya, are there any trends that you have observed which have been evolving in the field of general management? Anything specific coming up? And if there is anything that you have observed, how is it that we can address it?
Um, The hiring trends are almost the same. They have similar numbers. All in all, GenMan will take roughly 20 kids per campus. That's pretty much it. Every company has 1 to 2 people. So 20 to 25 is the usual number per campus, spanning across all roles. As for trends, the only thing I would say is it has transitioned from like most of the companies now have a online assessment, right? Gamified assessment. TAS has a gamified assessment, right? So you'll be required to play some sort of DILR puzzle. Like they'll have like a maze puzzle or like a ship puzzle. So these are again, they can seem daunting at first because I mean, we don't have any experience in it, right? It's not something you can prepare for. But essentially, it's not just that particular assessment. All in all, it's a very thinking on your feet kind of process, right? So what you can do to prepare is make sure that you're great at GDs, right? You have to practice for group discussions and extempore in general. So if because any opinion that they can ask you anything, right? Within tasks also, if you're applying to tasks in the interview, they can ask you anything. Okay, post COVID, where do you think the hotel industry is going? What would be your recommendations for Taj? So this is one of the questions that was asked to a person. No, is that person a hotel industry expert? No, but a basic knowledge of what is happening around you, that is required for Genman. I would say that is one requirement, and you should have an awareness of general trends in the business world. If there are any major events, like for example, AI was a major event during our placements. So ChatGPT had just come up, DALI, all the AI based software had come up. So in my final interview, they asked me like, "What is your opinion? Do you think AI is going to help us out, or is it going to ruin us?" So things like these you should know. You should have at least a two-liner ready for these things. Also, I can see there's a question and answer section on Zoom. There's two questions there. Can I have a career in general management and get placed in a good company, even if I have a subject back in fourth sem in graduation? But we'll make sure to clear it before getting into MBA. And if yes, which all companies can I get into? Okay, subject fail ka jo hai, your CV will only have your grade, overall grade. So the companies aren't going to ask for your entire transcript. Maybe they might ask for it later, and that too just as a proof that you've graduated. But that is post selection. Prior to selection, whether you're failed or not, if you've gotten into the college you wanted to get into, it's over. You don't need to worry about your grades anymore. Grades ka impact is there in consulting and finance the most, where they usually tend to have a filter of 25 to 26. What I mean by 25 to 26 is out of 30. If you look at your CV, 10th, 12th, UG, right? So if you say 10, 10, 10, that's 30. 10 is essentially 100%, 9 is 90% and above. So consulting typically, by consulting, I mean MBBK, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Kearney. These companies usually don't give shortlists to people who have anywhere below a 997. Similarly, in finance, 997 ka hi typical chalta hai. Ki even if you have a good CV, otherwise, grades is a bit of a filter. The reason for this is having high grades proves that you're a hard worker. Because it's not just about being intelligent, it's about having that work ethic where you can sit in the same place for 14, 15 hours, 16 hours. Because that's what consulting and finance require. So, which is why they look at grades with that much of an importance. So that is a filter. So you don't need to worry about, essentially, if you failed or whatever has happened in the past, you don't need to worry about it in terms of placements because overall grade ही matter करेगा. Second question is, rather than marketing, finance, HR, genuine man, what are the other specializations available in MBA? Product specializations, again, specializations don't play a role, and you'll find very few colleges in the tier one spectrum which offer a specialization. Apart from SPGen, I can't think of any other. Excel has an HR based separate MBA HR degree. MDI also has I think an HR degree. Similarly, Indore also has an HR degree. But apart from those different degrees, specialization is not offered. But if you're asking in the context of overall sector availability, then apart from market finance, HR, Genman, you have consulting, you have product management, you have operations. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Do I need to decide my specialization in consulting beforehand? There is no specialization in consulting. Like consulting, again, it's not a particular subject domain, right? So there is no specialization either in MBA, in the MBA context, in terms of academics, or in a degree context. Are there any questions?
Okay, I think we've covered more or less most questions. Just last question. I think Kush is asking that can you switch from one forte to another after a year into the job?
Which job, Genman?
I think yeah, Genman only. I think we've covered this more or less. Would you like to take it up still?
Yeah, I mean, see, Genman, your switch, what exactly? Your forte means domain.
I think
Yeah.
maybe domain or
Yeah.
maybe industry. Yeah.
So within task, you definitely can. Like I know a lot of people who, after their first year of rotations in different companies, a guy went to Titan in a marketing role, and then 2 years down the line, no, 1.5 year down the line, he switched to Air India in a finance role. So, but again, it depends on the company. TAS offers that flexibility in terms of domain. The other Genman companies don't always do, right? Because then it becomes a lot based on your work ethics, and TAS maybe it's based on your work ethics and your skills, but there's a little more flexibility in Tata as compared to other companies.
Right. I think Darshit is asking a question for me. Survi ma'am, I have a question for you. Does MDI offer Genman roles? Okay, so Darshit, yes, MDI does offer a lot of Genman roles. Some companies to name would be, as you know, Anindya also mentioned. So ABG does come and takes in a good number. Reliance also comes for Genman roles. We also have CK Birla Group coming for Genman role. And apart from that, Amazon also comes offering one of the highest packages. So even Amazon comes for a Genman role. Right. So MDI does have tons of Genman opportunities as well. Hope that helps, Darshit. Guys, I think we'll be nearing the end of the session. Satish sir, should we end? I think
Yeah,
we've
I
covered
think
the
we can.
questions.
Yes, yes. I think one suggestion for all the students who are attending the session, they can follow Anindya's LinkedIn profile, because Anindya keeps sharing a lot of resources which can be helpful in their placement, summer internships. He shares case com ke books, etc., a lot of, but different functions also. So I think that is one thing they can do before getting into MBA for next 1.5 months. So they can themselves speed up to certain things. एंड वो जरूरी नहीं है करना, मतलब कॉलेज में जाओगे तो कॉलेज अपने आप भी कराएगा, बट अभी कर लोगे तो थोड़ा हेल्पफुल हो जाएगा.
Sir, I have a question for you.
Right.
Which hostel were you in?
WH.
I was in Annex 303.
अरे क्या बात कर रहे हो? अनेक्स 327. कमलदा हुआ करते थे उस टाइम पे, अभी तो चेंज हो गया है.
हाँ.
गुड गुड यार. होपफुली व्हेन वी गो नेक्स्ट 9 मंजिल वाला हॉस्टल देखेंगे अब जो नया बन रहा है.
वो सर पता नहीं इस जन्म में मैं भी देख पाऊंगा कि नहीं, पता नहीं. वो तो अगेन एट द एंड ऑफ द डे इट्स अ गवर्नमेंट कॉलेज, तो
गुड गुड. चलो ग्रेट गाइस.
Guys, तो
थैंक
I
यू
think
वेरी मच.
काफी एलम बॉन्डिंग भी देखने मिल गई है हमें यहाँ पे IIM कैलकटा वाले लोग. Okay. All right. So, guys, we're closing this session now. So, firstly, I would like to thank. Secondly, I would like to thank Anindya for patiently listening to all our questions and answers so much for all the useful insights. I think some of the answers that you gave from an insider perspective who is working at Tata, I think that was really, really helpful for the audience. And last but not the least, thank you, Director Ahmedabad Satish sir, for being in the session. And with this, we are ending the session 4, Careers in General Management Time Series. Right. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone, and good night. We wish you all the best.
thank you for having me. Bye bye, take care.
Thank you very much.